Help support the show by joining the Patreon or becoming a YouTube member. Also, hit that like button and subscribe if you want more Browns-focused content. Hey, what's up, and welcome to Q&A, the show where I take your questions and answer them here in video format. A ton of questions to get into, so let's just jump into it. First one from Mund, who says, what are your thoughts on Joe Milton as a potential flyer developmental piece at quarterback and potential price of getting him from the Patriots? Okay, so let me answer that first question. I mean, it's fine, right? If they want to do that, they move for Joe Milton. I don't think you should put all your chips into that. You should treat Joe Milton the same way you treated DTR, which is like, if it happens, cool, but I'm not going to bet on it. And I would pay around the same price, right? I don't think I go higher than a 5th round pick to go get Joe Milton. Especially given that the Browns had a chance to draft him multiple times last year. What was Joe Milton, the 6th round pick? Yeah, he went the 6th round, pick 193. The Browns had a lot of chances to grab him if they wanted him. He's also 24 years old, so he's kind of old for a developmental quarterback. Let's say the plan is to develop him for a couple of years. Maybe he's ready by the time he's 26. I mean, if it's as a DTR replacement and you're kind of filling the role from DTR as the developmental guy to him, sure. But I'm not going to pay a lot for that. 2, assuming they have any interest in them as prospect, if Ward or Sanders falls, how low do you think they could have to go in order for AB and Kev to consider trading up into 1st round? Late 1st, right? If the price becomes just a 4th round pick to move up, so it's usually between picks 27 to 32. If that's the price to move up, I think the Browns would heavily consider doing that, right? If the price is about standard for moving up back into the 1st round, I think they would consider doing it. But if Ward or Sanders had failed, I think that would be probably the appropriate time. Maybe if they're convinced Pittsburgh loves one of these guys, they trade up to get ahead of Pittsburgh at 20. But that's the earliest I could see them moving up, in my opinion, if they don't want to get a quarterback at 2, right? Gagan says, what does an offensive coordinator do when the head coach is the play caller? So I get this question almost routinely. Every year we get this question because, like, when it was Alex Van Pelt, people ask the same question: what does Alex Van Pelt even do if he's not calling plays? And I hope everybody understands that being an offensive coordinator is a lot more than just calling plays, right? It's about putting together the play sheet itself. It's about putting together the playbook itself, right? What gets called on Sunday, that's like 2% of the job, man. It's not even important really in the grand scheme of things, because in order to get to who calls the plays or what plays get called, you have to make a play sheet. In order to make a play sheet, you have to have a playbook. Or at the playbook, the offensive coordinator has to decide what goes in the offense and gets out of the offense. There is way more work that gets done outside of play calling. Play calling is probably the most over talked about aspect of the coaching staff that doesn't reflect how much work a coordinator is or is not doing, like, straight up. The amount of times I've seen people overvalue who gets the play sheet on Sundays versus who's actually doing a lot of the work behind the scenes. I mean, it's ridiculous. So yeah, the offensive coordinator does a ton. They put together the play sheet. They put together the playbook. They set the agendas with what they're going to do with the offensive coaches. They run the meetings for the offense. They check in on the meetings for the offense. There's a ton of work that an offensive coordinator does that's not calling the plays on Sunday. Next question comes from Big Griff, who says, hey, Q, appreciate the videos. It's not looking like there's a franchise QB in this class, but 2026 and 27 look full of potential. Do any of these upcoming quarterbacks look like they'd be a great fit for the Browns? How would we get in position to draft them? I personally really like Lenore Sellers. He's big, fast, amazing pocket awareness. What do you think? Um, I don't like to get into the projection game super early on. I do like the players in this class. I think Cade Klubnik is somebody who the Browns would keep an eye on. Feels like a fit for everything that Stefanski wants to do. But projecting how the Browns would get into position to draft them, I mean, that is so far down the line, it's almost impossible to give you a projection. If the Browns have a pick in the 20s to start the draft because they made the playoffs, one, congratulations. The Cleveland Browns made the playoffs after winning 3 games the previous year. We should all be happy about that. But also, you have your other first-round picks. You could package them to move up. Not every team's going to be willing to sell, but there's going to be teams that invested in the quarterback this year, invested in the quarterback years prior, or have a quarterback but just stink, like Jacksonville, right? That might be in the top 10 that you can trade up, swap picks with, and they'll gladly take, whether you have to ship them Denzel Ward or some first round picks next year. You could put together a package that'll be appealing to get your guy if your guy's there in 26. So that kind of stuff, it could happen a number of ways. We don't know what the future's going to be. We don't even know if the Browns are going to be good this upcoming season. So we'll have to just wait and see on that. But yeah, I do like the prospects, or at least the outlook of the prospects at this time to that draft than I did feeling about the draft last year at this time. Sad 99 says, if Abdul Carter goes 1 and we take Travis at 2, do you think there's pressure to take a D lineman in the 2nd or 3rd round to give Miles the help he asks for? Is there enough talent in day 2 to find a guy that would take the pressure off of Miles, like aiming with Carter? Love the videos, Q. No, I don't really think there's pressure. Like, the reason you would go with Abdul Carter at 2 is simply because he'd be the best player available, right? If there were two prospects who are as good as Travis Hunter and Abdul Carter projected to be on the defensive side, on the offensive side, then the Browns would consider that. So no, I think what they do at 2 has nothing to do with positional need or positional value, or affects how they draft later on. What they do at 2 should be dictated by best player available. Straight up, right? You get the number 2 pick, you want to get you a stud, right? You don't want to end up drafting for positional value and waste an opportunity to add a all-pro caliber player to your roster because you wanted to force the draft into being something that it's not. When you're in position to get somebody who has all-pro potential, you take that guy, and you hope they develop into that all-pro, because that's going to be good for you going forward. You figure out the rest later. But thank you for the question. The next is from Jay Engelman, who says, so the ideal plan is to bridge to this year and find a long-term starter in the 2026 or 2027 draft. Then it seems like the best use of that number 2 pick this year would be to trade back and acquire an extra first in those later drafts. What trade back scenarios do you like, and which players do you like with the later pick? And what teams are you betting against? Here's the problem with trading back. Usually the teams in position that are at the top of the draft that can make those trade backs are teams who have a quarterback, had a down year, selling to a team that wants a quarterback in a draft that has a lot of quarterback prospects. Now, there are a couple of things that aren't here in that scenario for the Cleveland Browns. One, the Cleveland Browns are not a team with the quarterback. Two, this draft is not one that is quarterback rich. 3, it doesn't seem like the demand for quarterback outside the top 5 is really there. I mean, it's debatable whether the teams that are in the top 10 that we've been talking about drafting quarterback all year are actually going to do it, right? Like, a lot of these teams have first-year GMs, and usually first-year GMs want to wait until like year 2 to marry themselves to a quarterback, because they don't have to draft a quarterback that first year, right? They're not on the hot seat. And the reason all that stuff matters is the catch-22 of that scenario. if there was a quarterback in this draft class that truly justified a 3 first-round pick trade that you would use to get another quarterback in 2026, 27, you would just draft that quarterback. I don't believe that's where this draft class is. Now, if they make the determination that one of these guys are that good, if the Browns make that determination that one of these guys are that good, and that you could get C.J. Stroud level quarterback player better from one of these guys in this draft, then you take that guy at 2. But if that is not the determination you have made, then you're probably not going to take a quarterback. And think about it like this. There is no team in the draft that needs a quarterback more than the Cleveland Browns. Because if you look at all the other teams, they can wait on quarterback, right? Tennessee, they stink. It ain't going to matter if they got a quarterback this year or next year. They're going to stink. Who's another team? New York, they stink. They stink. They're young. They got rid of all their veterans. They're not in the position to go all in on a quarterback. They're not a quarterback away. They're not even close to a quarterback away, right? You can say the same thing about the Raiders. The teams that are a quarterback away are Cleveland, are Pittsburgh, or what else? Probably those two are the first two that come to mind where I'm like, hey, if they get a good quarterback, they could be something, right? And if the Browns are one of these teams that would probably be most eager to take a quarterback at 2 if one was good enough to justify it, if one had the ceiling to justify it, and they're not taking the quarterback, then why would somebody else who is less motivated to get a quarterback trade up with the Browns? I don't think you're going to get a crazy trade package. I think you get a trade package for a team that wants to move up and get a linebacker or get a corner, right? Abdul or Travis Hunter. I don't think that package is a bunch of future first-round picks. I think that package is, let me give you a second maybe, a couple fifths, some thirds. It's not going to be crazy value. You're not going to get that extortive value that you get when the team wants to trade up for a quarterback. And again, this just isn't the scenario in which a team gets a big haul for a quarterback. Because if there was a quarterback worth trading 3 first-round picks for in this draft, the Browns would take him at 2. That all being said, I do not think that that's the case. So I don't think there's going to be a crazy trade package for the Browns at 2. And if the Browns have to sit there at 2 and take Abdul Carter or Travis Hunter, you're fine. You're getting a blue chip defensive player. You're getting somebody who has potential on the defensive side, either at corner or even at wide receiver when it comes to Travis Hunter, and definitely at edge when it comes to Abdul Carter, to be a future All-Pro. And if you get a future All-Pro at number 2, you're going to be happy with that pick, right? Like, nobody's going to look back and be like, damn, yeah, Abdul Carter, he only was a future first-team All-Pro guy, but, Shedeur Sanders made 1 Pro Bowl. Like, nobody's going to care. Hell, the Browns drafted Myles Garrett number 1 overall in a draft that had Pat Mahomes, and nobody cares about that because Myles Garrett's one of the best defensive players of his era. If you draft somebody at 2 who ends up being a All-Pro caliber player, you're going to be happy with that pick. If you draft somebody at 2 who does not live up to that, you're going to be pretty unhappy with that pick. That's really how it goes. It's really simple like that. So, yeah, I don't think it would be a nice scenario if it could pop up, right? If somebody wanted to give us their first round pick in 2027 and 2026. But I just don't think it's a very realistic scenario given that the Browns are probably the most quarterback needy team in the draft and free agency. And if we're not going to be thirsty enough to make that move, well, then who is? Something to think about, right? I know we keep talking about trade back. We could trade the pick. But, like, who buying it? Like, it's got to be demand. Like, you trying to scalp a ticket with no demand. Who about to buy it? You set the price what you want. If nobody buys it, you don't get paid. The next question comes from CTG Cement, who I think has made every Q&A video with a pretty good question. Shout out to CTG for like the last year and a half. Big shout to the homie. Q, I remember you commented on the Jalen Milroe's pocket presence as a potential deal breaker for the Browns to draft him. Being that he is a student of the game, high work ethic, could you see him being able to fix this issue over the course of 1 or 2 NFL off seasons? Is pocket presence an innate trait, or can coaching and drill help you? I think of the correctable traits that exist, pocket presence is amongst one of the more correctable ones, as long as a quarterback doesn't develop a phobia of the pocket itself, right? Like if that quarterback is comfortable getting hit in the pocket, getting hit blind, if they have no issues with that, then it is a pretty correctable flaw at the end of the day. What you have to figure out with Jalen Milroe is if that's going to be a problem. I don't imagine it is a problem for Jalen Milroe, but that kind of thing's hard to predict, right? A great example of somebody who had trash pocket presence but was able to fix it, Josh Allen early in his career. He just stood there and let guys hit him. Kind of similar to how Jalen Milroe sometimes just stands there and let guys hit him. But eventually he developed the awareness over time, over getting hit enough times. He developed the instincts to step up, have better timing of when stuff's going to go, better awareness of how much time that he has and doesn't have. So it ended up not being a problem for him overall. There are other guys who you do worry about that being a problem, right? My biggest concern with somebody like Shedeur Sanders is he shows early tendencies of a quarterback who's going to see ghost in the pocket in the NFL, right? The same stuff that you worry about with like Blaine Gabbert, Sam Darnold had some of this going on. This is something I think Baker Mayfield's done a really good job correcting in Tampa Bay, but it was a huge problem for him in Cleveland, was whenever there was trouble, any glimpse of trouble, anytime somebody moved a little bit fast in the pocket, he wasn't expecting it. Anytime anything unexpected happened from a defensive player in the pocket, out of there, right? Out of there. Fast, quick, gone, right? Just leaving the pocket, which creates its own problems. You can even see this with like Deshaun Watson developed this over a year, regressed into this at the end of his Cleveland run, where like the second he was out. Like somebody like Cam Ward, I think has the opposite problem where he has a really good pocket sense, but he has developed that pocket sense so well that sometimes he's too eager to leave the pocket. Like he doesn't leave because I think he's trying to avoid pressure as much as I think he's just trying to navigate and climb the pocket to get outside because he wants to throw on the numbers and throw on the run and get out of structure because that's where he thrives the most, right? He likes jazz. Like if you like jazz, you will like Cam Ward. Cam Ward plays football like jazz. But Jalen Milroe, I think his issues are about him trusting his instincts and going off of that. He's a very book smart kid. He's somebody who got his master's degree. He has the highest work ethic. Like he has all of those things going for him. But sometimes I think Jalen Milroe can be a little bit too smart for his own good. Sometimes I think he sits there and he processes too much and he's thinking about too much when he's trying to throw the football instead of just going with what he knows, trusting what he knows. I think that is the leap that Jalen Milroe needs to make, because I see a guy who, when he's being instinctive, and you see it a lot in the fourth quarters of these football games, when he's being instinctive, when he's not overthinking things, he's pretty good as a passer. But what happens with Jalen is that he'll start to overthink things, and then he gets paralysis by overanalysis, and that's why his pocket presence looks so awful, because he's not in the moment. He's overthinking, and he's holding the ball, not even aware of how long he's been overthinking. That, to me, is the chief problem with Jalen Milroe. You need to get him to not overthink. That doesn't mean you simplify things. So because you don't think he can process. He just needs to go with his instinct and trust it a little bit better than he does. I think that means you put him in a lot of like design scripted offense, kind of like how the Browns have. You put him in an offense that basically says, this is the half field read. You see this, you do that, right? If this, then that kind of an offensive structure for him. If you do that with Jalen Milroe and you get him to trust his instincts, he's going to be a quarterback who can be on time. He's going to sense the pocket a little bit better because he's not going to be over-analyzing the play. That, to me, is his thing, right? If he stops over-analyzing, he's a pretty good football player. But what makes him have those lowlights is when he's overthinking it. He's overthinking a throw to the flat. He's overthinking a screen. He's overthinking just a basic play on third down because he wants to do too much with it. He's got to get out of his own way. I think that's Jalen Milroe's biggest thing, and I think that kind of is the reason his pocket presence is so bad at times, is because I see times where he's being instinctive and he has the natural presence to step up, scoot around, and look really good in the pocket. But when he's overthinking, he's a statue back there. And that's what you need to get him to just trust his instinct. And that's going to take time, reps, and success in order to build. And that's why Jalen Milroe is such a gamble to develop, because time, reps, and success, well, that's very hard to come by in the NFL, right? It's very hard to get as an NFL quarterback. It's why I thought he should have went back to college, because it's easier to get time, reps, and success in college football than it is to get it in the NFL. But now he's in a position where he has to do it in the NFL. And that's what he needs to be successful, in my opinion. Nathaniel says, I hear a lot from Cleveland media being sure that the Browns are out their mind if they don't take a flyer at quarterback at number 2. From what you have seen, the Browns organization in the Andrew Berry era, can they pick the player who they think they need to pick at number 2, or will they be pressured from the Cleveland media and let that influence them? Hey, look, man, last year everybody screamed at them to take a tackle, and they did not. Now, I still think they should have took a tackle, right? And these were two different situations. This is not a strong quarterback class. Last year was a strong tackle class. But the Browns have been pretty, you could call it stubborn, you could call it resilient, but they stick to their plan, right? When people want them to cut Anthony Schwartz, they wait like 2 years to really see if he stinks before they do it. The Browns are going to stick to what they feel like is the plan to go forward. And if they have decided that quarterback's not what they want to do in this draft, they are going to do that. Like this regime, I think the reason why they're so polarizing outside of like the up and down nature of their regime is that they kind of just do what they want to do. And some fans don't like that. You know, I've heard them be called arrogant because of that. Is what it is. I've seen a lot of regimes kind of just kowtow to whatever the fans want, and it ended in horrible fashion, right? The whole picking Johnny Manziel in the first round in 2014 was a complete result of people doing in that front office what the fans wanted them to do. And it was a disaster. In 2017, the fans wanted you to draft the quarterback instead of Myles Garrett because that quarterback was from Cleveland. They did not do that. That ended up being a very great decision for this franchise, right? They got to do what they got to do, and they got to trust what football ops is telling them, right? If they go through this process and they determine through their own volition, not because of fan pressure, that quarterback, there's one here or two. Okay, take them, man. Like, I want an answer at quarterback as bad as anybody. But if their process tells them, hey, I don't think any of these quarterbacks are going to be franchise level guys. I don't think any of these quarterbacks are going to be good enough to put us on par if we build around them with the Kansas City Chiefs, with the top of the AFC, right? If you draft the quarterback at 2, the goal is to have a quarterback who's good enough to get you to the Super Bowl. If your football ops process tells you that they don't think that guy's there, right? That if they take a guy at 2, they're hoping that they're hoping against what they have worked on all draft process, that this guy becomes something that their process tells them that they can't, then that's a bad decision. But if your football ops tells you this guy's CJ Stroud and you draft him, okay. Now, I hope your football ops is right about that, but you should do what the process that you have in place from football ops tells you to do, right? Remember back in 2014, I keep going back to this draft class, but back in 2014, the Browns had a leak that football ops had did a study, and that study told them that they should take Teddy Bridgewater. They ended up taking Johnny Manziel, right? If it's something like that, don't even think about quarterback at 2. But again, if they come out this process and they think that there's a franchise quarterback that can put them on par with those guys, and they're not saying to themselves, "Hey, we just need to get good enough at quarterback," then yeah, go ahead and do it. But I think that's the only thing that should influence them. And given these guys' track record for doing very unpopular things against the fans, well, I mean, this is the organization and the regime that like somebody okayed the Deshaun Watson trade and then moving on from fan favorite Baker Mayfield. I don't think we got to worry about them like being worried about if the fans like this move or not. Yeah, they've done a lot of unpopular things in his fan base. Some of those things have worked out, right? Keeping David Njoku was very unpopular at the time. That worked out. Some of these things have not worked out to a hilarious degree. So, yeah, man, whatever they do, it's going to be influenced by football ops. I just hope their process is good enough that it's not going to make people look foolish at the end of the day. All right, next question comes from the Shamrock, who says, Kevin mentioned on the Bark Tank with Andrew Siciliano that he will be in Mobile for the Senior Bowl. Question to you, if you had the opportunity to interview Kevin Stefanski, what question would you ask him? I would ask him multiple questions. One, how did the process of making the decision to, 1, move on from Baker Mayfield, and 2, move into Deshaun Watson, how did that happen? I don't know if there's anybody who specifically led the charge, but I would love to know how that came to place, because it made sense at the time, right? It just did not work out to a hilariously bad degree. The second one I would ask him is, when did you know that this was not going to work? And when did you want the organization to make moves to permanently move on from association? Well, not association, but from starting Deshaun Watson going forward. Number 3 would probably be, what do you feel like is stopping you from having the level of innovation offensively that we see from Matt LaFleur, Sean McVay, Kyle Shanahan, in very similar systems to yours? What has made your running game get stagnate, in your opinion? And what has made this offense not evolve in an era where we're seeing a lot of Kubiak, Shanahan style offenses evolve on a consistent basis? Those are the questions I would ask him. I think those are the questions you need some legitimate answers to if you want to figure out if Kevin's the guy or not. Mark says, what needs to happen for a Lions-like turnaround to happen in Cleveland? The same thing that happened in Detroit. Draft well, trade well, make some good signings in free agency. You do those things well, you will have a good football team. You have a good football team, players start to develop on that football team. You start to become a more affable place to develop guys. Then you draft more guys and you're getting value. And then all of a sudden you're really good. That's what it takes. Got to build a good nest, right? Can't have a garbage nest and expect a golden goose to be born out of it. If you want that golden goose, you got to build a mansion. Luke says, what's up, Q? Let's say the Browns draft Travis Hunter at 2. Maybe they trade Greg Newsome. Could Travis play slot corner? Oh, God, we're not about to waste Travis at slot. You draft Travis, he playing on the outside, next opposite of Denzel Ward. That's what you're doing. You're going to have Denzel Ward here. You're going to have Travis Hunter here. And then Cam Mitchell It can be in that slot. Maybe you want to trade Greg Newsome, keep him there. I mean, $20 million, that's a lot of money invested, right? You got a first round pick, a 4th overall pick that's got extended, and then 20 mil at slot. You probably going to want to move him off that. You got Grant Delpit to cover the slot, JOK if he comes back, and then you just throw Cam Mitchell in there. You good there. And then maybe somebody wants to come and grab Martin Emerson. Maybe you keep him as a high tier backup player. And that's what you would do. Yeah, man. You're not drafting Travis to play slot. No. He will play some slot. Let me be clear here, though. Like, he will play some slot because he's such a good zone corner and has such good instincts in zone. And you want him around the ball to make plays on it because that's the best thing about him. He's a great playmaker around the football. Get that kid around the football. He does special stuff. The problem with Travis playing the slot like full time, I don't want him covering tight ends, trying to tackle tight ends. He hasn't really demonstrated that he knows how to use his body in a way that he could throw it at bigger obstacles without injuring it. So keep him on the outside because he's going to be healthy on the outside. Slot, maybe on third downs, you kick him into the slot. Maybe you have Cam Mitchell, Martin Emerson, kick outside. You're going to have a lot of tools to play with, right? The same way if you draft Abdul Carter, you have 2 queens on the chessboard on the defensive line. If you draft Travis Hunter, 2 queens on the chessboard in the secondary. It's just a preference of where you want those 2 queens to play, right? But either way, you have 2 unstoppable and interchangeable pieces in one part of your defense, which is very, very, very difficult to stop if you scheme it up correct. Well, not scheme it up, but, you know. All right, Step Bro says, I think to be an elite QB in the NFL, you have to be elite at something, whether it be arm strength, accuracy, athleticism, something. Who does this draft class have that are elite at anything? Jalen Milroe is probably the closest thing to having an elite trait. If we're talking about physical ability. Like, Cam Ward has really good arm talent. It's not elite arm talent. It's not like Patrick Mahomes' arm talent, but it's pretty damn good. And Shador's pretty accurate, but he's not like Joe Burrow, right? Like, he's not dropping Joe Burrow level dimes on a regular basis at a Joe Burrow like clip or Jaden Daniels type clip. No, I mean, there's nobody here who puts together an elite package at quarterback. And even if you're just looking for elite traits, Jalen Milroe is an elite athlete, but has he used that athleticism in an elite way? I don't think so. I think he's been very good with his athleticism, right? I think he's been one of the best athletic quarterbacks in college football. Like, when we talk about elite talent, right? Because I know some people are going to be like, Jalen Milroe almost had 1,000 yards. What do you mean that's not elite? Nah, like, go watch Lamar Jackson and how easily he dominated college football with his ability to run. And then go look at Jalen Milroe. Tell me you think that's the same level of game that we on, right? Go watch Pat Mahomes and how he's able to throw the ball from all kind of arm angles and how far he's able to get it. And tell me if you think that Cam Ward's on par with that. Like, that's elite arm talent. Cam Ward's really good, but you got to be Pat Mahomes level to say you got elite arm talent, right? You got Jalen Milroe can run the ball really well, but you got to be on the same level as Lamar Jackson as a runner, especially when he was in college, for me to say you're an elite runner. He's not that. He's really, really good though, right? And then, like, even as a accurate passer, Shador Sanders, pretty accurate. But is it Joe Burrow in the middle of that 2019 championship run accurate? No, it is not that level of accuracy. So that's what I mean when I say even these guys who have these really, really good traits, I don't think they're elite traits. And if you're looking for that out of any of these quarterback prospects, you're going to be disappointed. None of those guys have elite level traits coming in. They're really, really good at a couple of things, but elite? Nah, man. If one of these dudes was elite, we'd be taking them at 2. If one of these dudes had elite level, if Jalen Milroe was out there running like Lamar Jackson was at Louisville, he would be the number 2 pick overall. If Shedeur Sanders was dropping dimes in the SEC like Joe Burrow was in 2019, he'd be going number 2 overall or 1 overall. If Cam Ward was whipping the ball with the same ease, power, and flexibility that Pat Mahomes was at Texas Tech, we'd be talking about him at 1 or 2 overall. No question. This channel would be filled of who you're going to go with, one of those 2 quarterbacks. But they're not there, right? So I don't think they have a singular elite trait there, which is fine. A lot of quarterbacks enter the draft don't really have an elite trait. Now, I don't think you need to have an elite trait at quarterback in order to be a franchise quarterback or even an elite quarterback. I don't think you need a singular elite trait. Like Tom Brady did not have the strongest arm. Maybe you could say Tom was an elite processor, but I think what Tom did really well was that he put together everything in such a consistent package. And the elite trait, I guess, about Tom was his elite consistency. Tom was the same guy every single day, every single game until the day he retired. That's why Tom won so much, because consistency leads to winning. But that's not like an elite physical trait that Tom got. That's just like an elite intangible badge that he has. So I don't know if you need to have an elite physical trait in order to be an elite quarterback. But if you're asking me if any of these quarterbacks in this draft class have a singular elite trait, nah, I don't think any of them have like a single thing that they do that I would categorize as elite. And if they did, I would be talking about the Browns need to get them at 2, maybe even trade up at 1 to go grab their guy. But that's just not what this class is. But y'all let me know what y'all think in the comment section down below. Have a great day. Have you a better night. Peace.